Hi, my name is Michelle Lawton. I'm the founder of Joyful Plate Branding and Education in New York City since 2011. And today we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, moderation. And I wrote the book on it, Moderating a Love Affair with Food, 10 Tips to Mindful Eating and Drinking. So we're going to talk about the drinking part of it today. We're going to talk about alcohol, and we are going to talk about fine wine. And that's why I brought in Scott Seidowitz. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I'm
Uh,
excited.
Thrilled to have you. We're old colleagues. I won't tell you how old. we
Please.
we go back. We go back to the P&G days in Cincinnati. Now Scott is in Vegas, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So Scott is the founder of Seidowitz Group. It's a group that's expert in positioning, brand positioning.
Right.
Yeah. And MMA, and you're also training to be an MMA fighter. MMA, is that it?
I have this crazy idea to be the oldest guy to have his first MMA fight, which is coming up in November here in Vegas, and retire undefeated at 1-0. So we'll see how it goes. I'm training intensely.
Right on.
It's-
I see the headlights in Vegas now. Well, if anybody can do it, you can. And if anybody can help me with this conversation today, you can. Because I thought, Scott and I were catching up, old friends from P&G, and we were talking about wine and branding, and he was sharing this study that he's going to explain to us in a bit. And I just thought, like, if I had to have anybody on this discussion, this podcast, it should be Scott because it's a big issue, a lot of levels, right? And what we were taught at P&G is to look at the data, but look at the outside, look at the macro trends, and lead your strategy from there. And so I'd like to frame this a bit and ask two questions.
Sure.
Let's drop the mic a little bit.
Good. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, the first is this a short-term correction? Are people panicking? People have been drinking wine, beer, whiskey, for generations, from the beginning of
For
time,
millennia, since
millennia.
the
Yeah.
Roman days, before that.
I mean, when the plants were dropping on, fermenting in the forests, they've been making some kind of alcohol.
Right.
So, are we panicking here? There's a lot of, the sky is falling. So that's the first question, and it's a really important one because we think about smoking and, lifestyle changes. It's really significant. So short term or long term. But then also, interestingly, is moderation, the new aspirational way to live versus excess. So
Okay.
it's a good meaty subject, right? And
Absolutely.
I'd like to frame it a little bit. Scott's going to get into his discipline and some of the data that he's looked at, which I find fascinating. But I work on a lot of trends. I go to the fancy food show, Expo West. I have a background. I started my career after P&G. Believe it or not, I went all the way to the fine wine business. So I was managing Krug Champagne and Marchese Antinori. So, I'm trying to stay unbiased in this because I love wine, but I have to be careful not to drink too much of it. So, when I think about this subject, I see three major um, discussions. First, macro. So let's really think about the time we're living in right now. We are only a few years post the pandemic. So clearly, health is so important to all of us. We're trying to be vigilant about our health. Uh, Look at us now. We're on Zoom. We work from home. We are, for the most part, dining alone or maybe with our partner or family, but not as much as we have in the past. Second factor, technology. Third, things are a little bit more casual now. So wine for hundreds of years was a bit more formal. We would have long lunches, sometimes with wine. And then if you think about it, cuisine's changing, right, with immigration. Um, we're not only having French and Italian wine, we're having Mexican, Peruvian, which might go with beer. Um, cannabis. There's so many levels to this conversation. So that's just at the cultural level, right, Scott? And then we have the consumer level, where our kids are not drinking the way we used to. That might be because they were looking at their parents, their big chill moment. I don't know, but Gen Z and millennials are drinking less, and that's just facts. And they're more empowered. They don't necessarily listen to rules. They're not listening to what they're told to do. The whole mindset is you do you. So that's the consumer. So we've talked about culture, consumer, and then there's the business part. So, it's a little bit of what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So, do you build it and they will come? Like from the White Claw to non-alcoholic to, all of these functional drinks, marketers are innovating. But also, what's happening with the consumer? Is there, some type of change that, bigger volume wineries are going to have to wake up and say, maybe they don't like the taste of wine anymore. So it's a very complex subject. So we're going to talk about it all. I can see that Scott's percolating already. See?
You got me thinking about lots of stuff here.
There's so much. So let's start off with the data. If you want to frame it from your perspective of your consultancy, and I know you've helped so many different clients and all these winning approaches to what you do, but I think, if you could frame this discussion based on first the facts. Let's say
Sure,
that.
sure.
What
Yeah,
what you
first, I would say to answer your big question, yes, the sky is falling. This
Mhm.
is not a short-term trend. This
Yeah.
is a long-term cultural shift. And usually, the way we try to determine between a short-term trend or cultural shift is we look at generations. And in this case, you have different behaviors between generations, and you also have younger generations now acting differently than younger generations did in the past.
Yeah.
Baby boomers and Gen Xers have actually modestly increased their alcohol consumption. And so millennials and Gen Zs reducing their alcohol consumption is a fundamentally different thing. In the past, it was always the younger generations drank more. So we're seeing absolutely when you see a shift between generations like that,
Mhm.
the sky's falling. And competitors, companies in this industry, in the alcohol, spirits, and wine industry, are going to need to, number one, not deny the trends, because that's the first thing that happens is denial. Two, not try to change them because you can't change a macro trend.
Mm.
Three, what they need to do is understand the trends, not just at the high level, but at the customer consumer needs level, and
Right.
really innovate to meet their needs in a way that's not being done yet.
Yep. Yeah. And, this short-term approach of taking the alcohol out of wine, that may appeal to some people. As we know from our product development
Right.
days,
Okay.
practice makes perfect. I mean, we're in
Right.
the infancy of this, right? But
Right. Right.
but the truth is, like I've tried them, and it's going to take some more time to get, those alternatives to appeal to somebody like me.
And it's just not it's not a deep insight to say, okay, people are drinking less, let's take some alcohol out of the wine. I
Right.
think we need to get deeper into, what really drives great brand positioning. And by great, I mean brand positioning that drives demand. Because in the end, a brand is not about having some ethereal, cool image. It's about, does it drive demand for the product? You need to really understand the needs of your target, the beliefs of your target, and the pain points of your target, and innovate to meet those. And just reducing the alcohol level doesn't seem like you've really gone deep. And I don't mean you, it doesn't seem like the industry
Right.
has yet got deep into what are the needs, beliefs, and pain points that could drive really innovative products.
Well, as you talk about that, case in point, look at plant-based meat. Okay.
Mhm.
Like 10 years ago, uh, Beyond Meat was IPOing, you know,
Right.
everyone thought like Burger King's going to change their platform immediately. People were making a lot of money, betting on this massive change, but come full circuit a decade later, it didn't really satisfy a
I
need.
know, isn't that interesting? But I think I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right that it was just based on a macro trend and not understanding deep insights into their customers. Like a lot of vegetarian people didn't want to have fake artificial meat, and a lot of meat eaters, even if it tasted a lot like meat, they weren't that interested in switching. So there wasn't the deep understanding of the customer that really drives breakthrough business growth.
Yeah, so that's one example where it didn't work. But
Okay.
interestingly, plant-based dairy is doing well. You know, the
Mhm.
Califia of the world, the oat milk, that could be maybe variations on taste. You know, there's a lot more. And then also more consumption occasions, right? You know, people are
Right.
waking up, they're having their
Interesting.
coffee. And so it's not singular. They're mixing it into something else. So um,
You know what else I think some of the competitors did? They're like Silk met the natural nutrition needs of the health conscious vegetarian leaning consumer, as well as the taste needs of the dairy consumer that maybe is looking for an alternative. So I think they met the deeper needs better than the fake meat people.
yes, yes, in the battle of the
That's,
of the alternatives, right?
that's right.
Yeah. So we are going to get deep into this, you know, in a little bit about segmenting, and you know, we have some hypotheses, but you know, again, there's so many levels to this. Can you present, getting back to the data on this? Um, boy, you know, in the past 3 years since I've written this book, there's just thousands of articles, and a lot of it's clickbait, to be honest with you. So that's
Right.
why I wanted you to present this, you know, this paradox here in a
Yeah, sure. It was what you and I think, sparked all this as we first
yeah,
looked at it is moderate alcohol consumption? Because in the end, the question is, well, I think you said, is moderation, the new,
aspiration.
yeah, yeah, right. And but that also leads to the question of, is moderate alcohol consumption healthful? And it's fascinating. There was a report released by the US National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine
Mhm.
that says drinking moderate amount of alcohol, for women a glass a day and for men 2 glasses a day, actually, how do we look at health outcomes for this? Well, all-cause mortality. According to this study, people who drink moderately die less. So they're
I'll
promoting,
take
saying,
that
no, it's
data.
good.
Right.
Yeah, good. Now, but there's another study from this is a crazy name, the Interagency Coordinating Committee on the Prevention of Underage Drinking, which is a cross-governmental, cross-departmental organization within the US government. They came out with a competing study. These are both meta-analyses, and
Mhm.
theirs concluded that moderate alcohol consumption increases all-cause mortality. And this crazy thing has been going on that conservatives are promoting the meta-analysis that says you should drink, and liberals are promoting the one that says you shouldn't drink. And I wonder what is going on with the world when liberals are saying don't drink and conservatives are saying drink.
It is so complex, and you know, you can't read the data verbatim like that. Like you have to inject some type of, you know, intuition, right?
Yeah, well, there's one more study.
Okay.
This one was funded by Health Canada. It's another meta-analysis. I reviewed it. It was very thorough. What's really interesting, it was co-authored by Tim or Tom Stockwell,
Mm.
who is a noted believer that alcohol is bad for you.
Mm.
And the conclusion of this one is that moderate consumption of alcohol, again, a glass a day for women, 2 glasses a day for men, neither increases nor decreases all-cause mortality. It really doesn't have an effect on your health, so you can drink moderately without worrying. If I was going to put down a bet, I'd put my bet with the guy who's against alcohol that says, yeah, but moderate alcohol doesn't hurt you. I think that's probably the best study, which says, again, moderation is where it is.
Fascinating. And was that a recent study from Canada?
Yeah, it came out in 2023.
2023, right? Because it's getting really confusing, even for somebody like me who's deep into food and beverage. Uh, I mean, wasn't it just a couple months ago that the Surgeon General in the US said, yeah, you know, it's important to socialize. the risk of drinking is less than, the risk of loneliness.
Right.
Right.
Oh, I think that's a good point. I mean, he was citing also the U.S. National Academies of study saying that moderate alcohol consumption is actually beneficial. But I think that's a very good. The other point he made, I think, is a very good one, which is if moderate alcohol consumption basically has no impact on health, positive or negative,
Mhm.
but there's a social aspect to it that can be beneficial to people, I think that's a good reason to go ahead and drink moderately. But I think there's something else there, and that's where we have a consumer insight.
Mhm.
And if you just market, for example, a new product on it has lower alcohol content, that's pretty boring. But if the industry were to really understand at a deeper level the social aspects of moderate alcohol consumption, there could be some great marketing and great product innovation. Because in the end, people don't make decisions logically, they make decisions emotionally with their heart. And the
Yes.
industry really is going to need to learn to not just throw out random emotional stuff that people will be turned off by, to really understand what are the social aspects of alcohol consumption, of wine consumption, and effectively innovate and market in those areas.
That's really, really interesting. There's a huge emotional
Oh, yeah.
meaning there. And what I don't think people realize is that, the sugar is fermented out of the
Mhm.
alcohol, right?
Right.
So in my book, having a glass of red wine is better than having a cupcake with icing that's
Oh,
loaded with
heck yeah.
sugar, right?
No question.
That's going to give you that, sugar high. And yet, I walk around New York and I see kids, or young adults lining the street for crumble.
Sorry about
Give
that.
it, no problem. That's great.
Ginger wants to get in on the wine conversation.
Yeah, don't put a bowl of wine. Give him the milk. Uh, but I mean, this is where the conversation is really complex because
Can I mention something about that?
yeah,
Something interesting that I've read about recently. You mentioned earlier that, we've been consuming alcohol throughout human history. I mean, it's actually true. It was developed very on in her human history. Sugar is a recent phenomenon. It really upsets me, like with my stepson, he's now 25, but very close to him. And when he was a kid and people would, want to give him sweets and all, and I'd say, you can have a very little bit of that. And they'd be, why don't you let your son eat a piece of cake? You know, in colonial times in this country, people ate on average 5 pounds of sugar a year. By by 1900, I think it was up to maybe 80 pounds a year.
mm,
Today, it's up to 150 to 200 pounds of sugar a year. This is a modern thing in human history. It's only happened in the last 1 to 200 years, and it has had dire health consequences for us as a population, especially in the United States. It is so much more unhealthy for an adult or a child to be eating a cupcake than it is for an adult to be drinking a glass of wine. And
absolutely. I'm
just when
gonna
you brought
say,
that up, wine's been with us for millennia, cupcakes 200 years at most.
yeah, and let's parallel these studies. I mean, there are all these studies out there about sugar and cancer. So
Absolutely.
oh,
And all-cause
we
mortality.
should do
It's
this study,
conclusive.
Scott.
Yeah,
We should do this study. Like these need to be looked at in parallel. Um, you can't look at wine or alcohol, in a vacuum. You have to look at the whole picture. That's
Mhm.
actually why I called this book, um,
Mhm.
Tips for Mindful Eating and Drinking. And it's a little complex because there's discussion about abstinence of alcohol, right?
Mhm.
There's discussion of like overeating and the gluttony, and then there's of course now the whole GLP-1 pill. I saw yesterday that you could take the GLP now in a pill even.
That's right.
It's complex to talk about food and alcohol together, but I did because that's actually you know my lifestyle. And I think that, a healthy lifestyle is a moderate one. So I'm with you. I know that, I'm a bit biased because I want to keep drinking. But, but I wanted to bring you on to discuss this because I want to live a long time. So
Mhm.
part of the reason I wrote this book is I was alarmed by the data that you just presented a bit, Um, I want to be proactive. And so, like, your intuition just tells you, listen, you shouldn't be having a, a box of chocolates, a cupcake, two margaritas, or, a bottle of wine every day. Everything in moderation. Everything in
Right.
moderation. So I think, the data that you just presented from this Canadian researcher, it just makes common sense. Like, sense, doesn't it really come down to some common sense?
Well, yes and no. We need to be careful about common sense because sometimes things, once they get ingrained into our culture, they become common and they become the common sense thing. Like common sense, it's fine for kids to be eating cupcakes. It's fine to let them eat chicken McNuggets. They don't need to worry about it till they get older. Well, now we have a crisis of type 2 diabetes among children.
Yeah.
By the time children are 10, 11, 12, certainly by 18, there's already plaque building up in their arteries. So we do need to be careful about the common sense because sometimes the conventional wisdom, the prevailing common wisdom isn't right. So I think we need a balance. It's
That's a good point.
maybe
Like, then you could go back and say, well, one cigarette, two cigarettes,
that's right.
a big deal. So we've learned more, right? So
I won't wear my seatbelt every once in a while.
exactly, exactly.
So some things I guess are absolute. Well, but I agree with you on moderation in general. I think moderation, perhaps, to me, is the bigger theme than common sense.
Right. No, that's a
Because
great
you never
point.
lose if you moderate.
And I like this idea of, socialization. Um, and and we're going to need to make it easier for us to be together in this
Mhm.
world.
Right.
It is loneliness epidemic is pretty alarming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it does present a huge marketing opportunity because I studied wine education. I know that wine, I say in my book, wine is a gift from God.
Uh-huh.
I know what goes into fine wine and everything that it takes to produce it. Some crops, some vintages aren't even sold. So it's a
Right.
natural living thing. I'm always going to appreciate it. And sometimes, what I advocate in my book is starting the week well and taking a couple days off instead of doing dry January, taking like Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday off all year long.
I like that much better because I could never make a whole month dry.
Right, right. But I think being the marketer and taking
Mhm.
my personal experience out of it, you have to be realistic because I guess it is easier sometimes to abstain than to moderate.
Mhm.
And technically that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm abstaining for days on and then I go back to wine. And that's not always easy, So,
Right. Right.
you know, so to your point, like, how do we really think? So let's move on to the marketing and business part of this discussion. Like,
Well, you gave me a marketing and business idea right there, and I just want to throw this out.
baton.
One, one, because you just gave me the idea, and two, I think it's an example of how consumer insights could really drive innovation and better brand development within the wine and spirits industry. And you said about the social aspect of wine and spirits, and that we have a loneliness crisis in this country.
Mhm.
Now, here's an opportunity for wine and spirits to try to create, I don't know what the solution would be exactly, but try to create experiences where people could come together and wine or alcohol would be at the center of it, but in moderation. But it would take the benefit that is unique to wine and alcohol, the social aspect of it, and try to address this people's need. And you don't want to put it as the negative, the loneliness crisis. From a marketing standpoint, it would be the need for connection, the need for people to get together and connect. You could really build a great marketing campaign around that. You could innovate, but it's looking at your solution beyond just the product. And there's companies that have done that effectively and ones that haven't. I mean, like examples of companies that innovated well and ones that didn't in the face of cultural and structural change. I mean, 30 years ago, IBM and Microsoft had the exact same market capitalization, about $50 billion. Today, Microsoft is worth 3 trillion and IBM is only worth 250 billion. And that's because through that whole period, the whole change of the internet and and everything else, Microsoft embraced the changes and innovated.
Right.
And IBM held on to their old models far too long.
Absolutely. I mean, uh, we need to leverage the new technology, the new infrastructure, the new way of thinking, and connect that framework to consumers' love of relaxation. I think
But
about
also
like
their need for connection, which
for
is lacking
connection.
now.
So
Yeah,
I think about how Airbnb has evolved. I mean, I just listened
right.
to a fantastic podcast recently with the CEO of Airbnb, and
Interesting.
he had this big idea that in addition to leveraging the asset of your home, it was the
Right.
fact that people needed flexibility and people wanted experiences. And now Airbnb you could be in a yurt in the woods if you wanted, in a tree
Right.
house,
Right.
or Marriott Bonvoy. I'm a Bonvoy member.
Right.
They're offering experiences. So I think, from my understanding, there's been a program called Come Over October instead of Sober October, where
Right.
fine wine people are encouraging us, in any month, to get together and have home wine parties. And, I think it's a nice message, but it needs to go further. And I
Mhm.
think that we can, you and I, and there's a way to build this out, but it has to be built from the consumer, the product,
Right. Right.
like, how do we leverage the current product of a glass bottle, but
Mhm.
also, are there other ways of enjoying wine?
Absolutely.
Uh,
How do we innovate? Yeah.
how do we innovate? Um, and also, it's somewhat complex because you have different segments, right? You have fine
Right.
wine, which is, like in a luxury model, that's the tippy top, that's the Krug champagnes of the world, right? And that's, they're only going to make so much of that. So we're
And
probably
you used to
okay.
work in that sector, right?
I did. The
And
the
you must have gotten some great
yeah,
product
the samples
samples.
were good.
I know.
I had Krug,
I'm jealous.
I had Krug Grand Cuvée in my fridge as a
Oh my God.
20-year-old. Yeah.
I'm
So,
so jealous.
I've had a good life. But, at that level, you said something really interesting to me last week. It's really about understanding the target consumer,
Right.
requires wealth. Um, Sadly, we're in this stage now of income inequality. So there's, the rich are getting richer. So that segment is probably going to be okay. The sky's not falling as much.
Right.
You
Right.
have, the mid segment, the mid tier, let's call it like $30 to $50, where, maybe it's a matter of bringing people along. But I think that the sky's really falling for, the main foundation of this business, which are
Right.
wines under, jug wines, wines under $10. And to be honest with you, when I go to Madison Square Garden and, I'm watching, we're going to see REM, not
Mhm.
REM, but a cover band on Friday. So I have them on the brain. But if I'm seeing Michael Stipe, I'm not drinking bad wine, in a cup.
No kidding.
Like, no. So, like, there has to be a better beverage for me at a mass venue that I can enjoy. And to be honest, I don't know that they've really cracked it yet. Like, I don't want to drink bad wine.
Yeah.
I want to smuggle it in my bottle. So,
I know. And they don't let you do that anymore.
no. So, like, there is, I think that the sky's falling at the bottom because, it's the bulk wine. They're ripping up crops because demand is down, costs are up. It's
Right.
very complex. But let me turn it over to you just to frame the volume. Like, you were talking in the very beginning of this conversation about the sky is falling. And I
Right.
just had on uh, the Silicon Valley Investment Bank call. I sent you the data on it last week, and the data is not good. um,
Mhm.
supply, the demand is continuously down across all these different varietals. So, maybe they were asleep at the wheel for a few years. I think that there was a lot of denial going on, but we have arrived and it's happened very quickly. So, Scott, MIT background, how do you frame this?
Well, I always go back to when you have major cultural and structural changes in an industry, you need to understand, it's easy to understand the macro trends. You
Okay.
need to understand how that is impacting individual consumers
Mhm.
and identifying the consumers within your segments. I've mentioned this before, true innovation and brand positioning strategies that drive demand for products at a major level require you to really have a deep understanding of the needs, beliefs, and pain points of your customers. And let that drive your innovation and drive your marketing and brand messaging. And the reason is because needs, beliefs, and pain points are motivators. Those are the triggers in people's brains that motivate them to take action. So if you understand them, you can make your brand stand for a benefit that will meet those needs, beliefs, or pain points. Or you can innovate to find new ways to meet those needs, beliefs, and pain points. And I truly think, I think it's hard for an industry to do this together. That there was that October thing, but
Right.
really the major competitors or one major competitor in the industry is going to really need to take the lead on this, and not out of any altruistic reason for the industry, but because they'll be able to really succeed by doing it. But I think the competitor that truly understands the new consumer at a very deep level is going to win. And if none of them do it, the industry will continue to decline.
Yeah, you're right, because there's a lot of infighting. It's so bureaucratic. When I go back to P&G, you know what product I use every day in my kitchen? A Swiffer. A Swiffer.
Oh, is that right?
Okay, so you know that broom?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
We
so
know well.
like I don't know how many billions of dollars that category is, but P&G probably said, okay, um, we have a new platform opportunity here. Um, we have all the cleaning products that we've been developing over the years, but they really studied the consumer and what are their needs? Well, they need a way to, flexibly wipe your kitchen. But the reason it's so brilliant is the way it was engineered. They really thought about, the needs for somebody to get into those
Right.
craft food.
P&G is brilliant in starting with the needs and innovating to meet those needs.
So you
And
have
it doesn't always succeed, but when it
something
succeeds, it's huge.
something as mundane as that, right?
Right.
And the good old Pantene, more on the more luxury side of,
Uh-huh.
2-in-1 shampoo. Okay, shampoo and conditioner, with vitamins that you can put in your hair. So I don't know. I mean, this is my life to this point. I started at P&G. I worked for Remy Martin. Now I'm in the natural food space. So I don't know if wine, can ever become that utilitarian, but we could build a better mousetrap. I do think there's been a lot of discussion that seems so simple, but do people realize that wine is natural? Wine, well-made wine, without all the, preservatives, is a natural product that comes from the earth. And that's, why everyone goes to Whole Foods. So I think that's one start point. So there's, start point on if I receive this as a market research project right now, we would tease out like, what are the truths and, what are some of the misnomers about wine. So thinking about insights, thinking about it always comes
Right.
back to breaking it down, right? Like what are the consumer insights? What are the benefits and what are the reasons why? And how do we,
Right.
enhance the current product, or do we need to, start all over and innovate,
Or all of the above.
or all
And
of the
and
above?
and then there's also that also drives your what your brand stands for. So it's understand those insights, and the insights that truly drive demand generation is understanding the needs and the beliefs and the pain points, which are the motivators that trigger action. But that can drive your brand messaging, it can drive your product improvement, or it can drive new product innovation, and all of them. But that's the core. And question is, it really would need to be one of the market leaders. And you know the wine industry better than me, but Ernest and Julio Gallo, or I'm
Right.
trying to think who are the other really big, the
Not,
Constellation Brands,
yeah.
one
Mhm.
of these big wine producers um, needs to invest in truly understanding who is this new consumer and
Yeah. And
what motivates them.
I don't think it's just about like box wine or a
Right.
Tetra Pak, you know?
Right.
It can be bigger than that. Well,
Yeah.
I would love to take it on. At
Oh, it
some
would be so much fun. It would be so interesting doing a really in-depth research project to understand the emerging wine consumer or the maybe wandering off wine consumer, and understand them in such a deep way that it would lead to the kind of innovation and brand messaging that we're talking about to really help turn around the industry. That'd be very interesting and exciting.
I could drink to that.
Me too.
Yeah. What
Me
did
too, but I'll drink to anything.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, what did you say to me before we started this Zoom? It ain't over till it's over.
That's right, which is a Yogi Berra quote. Absolutely. When I said the sky is falling, that doesn't mean it has to continue to fall. It's just if you don't take action, you're not going to do anything to address the cultural and structural market trends.
Right, right. All right. Well, Scott, we've been talking for a while now. Uh, Anything else that you want to share on this subject? But I have a very important question before we end. But anything else you want to share?
Well, I'll just say, I'm a marketer, and but I'm also very much of a health enthusiast, and also love fine wine and collect wine and Bordeaux wine. But a lot of my interest in this stems from my new business with my good friend Ben Rudnitsky, who is a noted kidney doctor here in Las Vegas and also a longevity expert. And healthfulness and longevity are two great interests of mine. And he and I have been developing the business plan for a longevity practice we're going to be opening here in Las Vegas. And it led me to doing a lot of this research on alcohol consumption and really led me to the idea that I think brought us together that moderation is really the way to go. It's the way to go in alcohol consumption. It's the way to go in a lot of things. And when you moderate, there's a few things you do in the absolute. You
Mm,
don't smoke in the
right.
absolute. You wear your seatbelt in the absolute. But other than those things, if you bring moderation into your life, it's usually the best strategy for happiness, healthfulness, longevity, and vitality. And that's what our practice is about. And that's so moderation will be one of our themes, along with some other things.
Well, good luck to you. This is such a important subject,
Yes.
and you're perfectly positioned to support people. I'm sure you have a great partner in that, so I'm excited to learn more about that. You'll have to
Thank you.
you'll have to tell me what foods to eat for my kidneys.
Okay, right.
I'm always, what's how much fiber should I eat? How much protein and all this. But yeah,
You
ultimately,
need a lot less protein than you think.
good, good.
Protein is way overstated. High protein diets do not lead to good long-term health outcomes if you do
Yeah,
them for the long term.
I was just reading.
But for your kidneys, if you're ever worried about kidney stones, just drink lemon juice.
I do that. I
Good.
green juice, yeah, lemons, ginger, celery.
Oh, very healthy.
Yeah, yeah, I try.
Yum.
I try.
Next time I'm in New York, I'm coming to
I'll
your
make
house for
you
some
juice.
juice.
I'll make you juice. One of my best
Good.
Valentine's
And
gifts.
then we'll drink a glass of wine.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so on that note, tell me your favorite wines. You mentioned Bordeaux.
Oh.
Like it doesn't have to be a brand, but are you a strict Bordeaux guy? Do you drink around
No,
the
my wife, Belly, and I just we love drinking good wine. We do have a few favorites. We are not generally fans of Napa wines. We just don't like the fruit forward, powerful Napa style quite often. Not that there's anything wrong with it, it's just not what we prefer. But there is one winery in Napa Valley it does Bordeaux style wines, but it has kind of the oomph of the Napa fruit forwardness, just a hint of it. It's a Hungarian name, uh, Kapchundi,
Hmm.
and their wines are amazing. By far our favorite Napa wines. Beyond that, we love great Bordeaux's, of course. Not that we drink them often, but for first growth Bordeaux's. And there's one that's a little more reasonable is La Torre Pomerol is one of our favorite go-tos. And I'll mention in Italian wines, we love Chiretto, which is a great Barolo and Barbaresco
Now we're
producer. So
talking.
those are my favorites.
Now we're talking. I learned fine wine with Marchesi Antinori. So, early on I was drinking Barolos and Bar
Yum.
Barbarescos and Amarones and Chianti Classicos. And yeah, people ask me all the time, what's your favorite? I'm like, it's like comparing
How
children.
can you
No,
choose?
how could you possibly?
I
Like,
will give you one tip though. I think Barbarescos are a great choice for many people who want to maybe try a higher end
yeah,
wine because they can be drunk a little younger.
yeah,
They're light. How can anybody not like them? Sometimes the bigger, heavier wines people are not accustomed to yet. But Barbarescos are a great choice for people that want to start dabbling in finer wines.
absolutely. Barbarescos. And then, we're big Cab Franc people. We're deep in Loire.
Sure.
We love our
Yeah.
Loire. But oh gosh, I'm laughing at myself. I have a pen here that says Schloss Dürnstein. We went to Austria. We love
Oh.
Vienna and Austria. So we're drinking, Riesling's Pinot Bianco, Pinot Blanc. Anyway, well, it's 5:30. It's
Time for a glass of
time
wine.
for a glass of wine. But this has been such a great discussion. Thank you so much for
No, thank you.
friendship over the years. And I really hope that we can flex our brains for someone and help crack this code. And it would be such a pleasure to work with you. So, Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. It was great fun. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me, Michelle. And I really, really support, both your interest in the wine industry, but also your message of moderation, I think is wonderful. And I hope everybody reads your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's an important one. We want to live a long time. Oh, and as I always say, you want to protect your health and your joy.
Oh, good for you.
Time
I
for that
agree.
one. All right. Thank you. Talk soon.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.